Her official platform unveiled. Melania Trump lays out her priorities as First Lady, what she is proposing to help children. Litmus test? We examine whether Catholic nominees to key government positions face discrimination for their faith. 6 more years. Vladimir Putin is sworn into office for a 4th term as Russia's president. We have reaction. And the world's oldest standing army. New members pledge their lives to protect the Holy Father. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, May 7th, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Be Best. It's the name First Lady Melania Trump is giving her campaign to help children live a healthy lifestyle. She says she's committed to serving young people affected by everything from the opioid crisis to cyberbullying. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. Today in the Rose Garden, President Trump praised his wife, saying America is blessed to have a First Lady devoted to children and to helping those who suffer. Ms. Trump considers herself a full-time mom, but now she wants to expand care to kids across America.
I feel strongly that as adults, we can and should be best at educating our children about the importance of a healthy and balanced life. So today,
Ms. Trump is announcing 3 pillars to her Be Best initiative. She wants to highlight the importance of using social media in positive ways, support the children affected by the opioid crisis, and promote well-being by encouraging values like kindness and respect. Melania's program follows in the footsteps of other First Ladies. You may remember Michelle Obama introduced an initiative to fight childhood obesity, and Laura Bush worked to promote early childhood education and literacy. She did not address it today, but earlier this year, the First Lady said she is well aware that people are skeptical of her discussing cyberbullying. Critics have said the president is part of the problem. She says that will not stop her from doing what she knows is right. Lauren?
Mark, right before the First Lady announced her initiative today, the president previewed his announcement on the Iran deal. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. The president tweeted he will announce his decision on the Iran deal tomorrow at 2 p.m. from the White House. This comes just days before a May 12th deadline. He has called it a terrible deal, so it seems unlikely he would keep the agreement with Iran based on his own description. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons, thank you. President Trump announces a delegation that will attend the opening next week of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. It includes his daughter and advisor, Ivanka Trump, her husband, Jared Kushner, an envoy to the Middle East, and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. On Capitol Hill, Catholic political nominees have been under fire for their faith. And this week, another high-profile Catholic will most likely face tough questions from the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi takes a look at the recent lines of questioning and the trend. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. Joseph Sellis served on President Trump's campaign Catholic Advisory Group. He's the founder of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast and has been appointed as ambassador to Fiji. His confirmation hearing is set for Wednesday. We'll be following it closely, focusing on questions, zeroing in on the personal beliefs of this nominee.
First, Catholic judicial pick, Amy Barrett.
The dogma lives loudly within you, and that's of concern.
Then, Protestant Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo.
Yes or no, do you believe gay sex is a perversion?
And judicial nominee, Wendy Vitter.
Do you consider yourself to be pro-life now?
Professor Robert George of Princeton, a prominent Catholic, says this line of questioning is wrong.
My advice for the Democrats and the progressive movement is to fight back against the elements within your own party and movement that are moving in the direction of anti-Catholic, anti-Christian bigotry.
But Democrats defend their questions.
Wendy Vitter is committed unalterably and unequivocally to fight women's reproductive rights. I believe that she is unfit to be a federal judge.
Democrats are slowing down the process by using the maximum 30 hours of debate time allowed for each nominee. Conservative analyst Rachel Bovard says Republicans need to do more to stop Democratic obstruction.
Right now, you turn on C-SPAN, you see an empty Senate floor because no one's enforcing this rule. But until Democrats come down and Republicans say, you're going to obstruct, then you have to come talk. And if they don't talk, let's move to the vote.
Bovard tells me Republicans should also call Senate sessions Mondays and Fridays. She says that will give vulnerable Democrats, many of which are up for re-election this fall, less time to campaign. This week, Lauren, the Senate votes on 6 judicial nominees.
Conservatives and liberals agree the Trump administration is trying to stack the deck with conservative judges. So how does President Trump compare with previous administrations as far as the number of confirmations are concerned?
Well, if we look at the overall judicial nominations that have been confirmed, district as well as appeals court nominees, President Trump is behind President Obama. President Obama had 41 in his first 2 years in office. President Trump right now, we're in May, he has 33 confirmations already in his first 2 years, or I guess year and a half.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi, thank you, Jason. Retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North is set to become the next president of the National Rifle Association. The former Fox News contributor brings star power to the gun lobbying group as gun control advocates seek to seize on momentum in the wake of a string of deadly mass shootings. North will be replacing Pete Brownell, who decided not to seek a second term as president. Joining me now is Christopher Bedford, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, author of The Art of the Donald. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Oliver North, very well known in conservative circles, especially conservative media, because of his contributorship at Fox News. He is also known under the Reagan administration as being involved in the illegal sale of arms to Iran, the Iran hostage crisis. What does this pick say about the escalation, potentially, that the NRA is doing in order to fight the movement of the gun control advocates?
I would say it's a massive and loud escalation. Before, we used to have an NRA that would be willing to work with Democrats, and Democrats who would be willing to work with the NRA. So you would see NRA endorsements of Senator Harry Reid and his reelection. But now Harry Reid was somebody who came into the U.S. Senate with a pretty decent gun voting record. Now the guys who are in charge of the Democratic caucus in the U.S. Senate are very much anti-gun. So the NRA has picked maybe the first celebrity since Charlton Heston to be the president, somebody who can rally the base, who's conservative. But it shows that they're not willing to get along. Because remember, Oliver North, his whole original claim to fame was his complete defiance of U.S. Congress when he was working for President Ronald Reagan to fight the communists.
Let's talk about exactly what you think is going to happen. Now, you have this movement across the country that has come, and we have teenagers, we see all of them. How is this really going, this star power, going to change that movement? The president was talking to the NRA. He had flirted with gun control measures around that. Where are we going?
And President Trump has still put forward a little bit of the executive action he was willing to take to the Department of Justice to push back on bump stocks. We got the NRA, and we got right-wingers like Tucker Carlson saying, you know, maybe bump stocks should be something that we talk about. But what we'll see, I think, here is that teenagers, well, you don't want to get in an argument with them. If your boss is a Republican senator, do not let him get into an argument, or her, with these teenagers who have been victims. But it doesn't mean that they're right about the nature of our rights, the nature of our Constitution. And I suspect that we'll see massive overreach by the left across the country. For example, in Illinois, moving the age up to 21. How does that work? You can vote at 18, you can fight in the military at 18. We've decided in this country you're an adult at 18. So these kind of changes would be arbitrary and likely be knocked down by the Supreme Court.
Let's switch subjects. Earlier, we heard Jason Calvi, our Capitol Hill correspondent, report on this trend that we've noticed in attacking judicial nominees for their faith, for their religious beliefs. What do conservatives need to do in order to fight that line of questioning?
I think they've been doing a pretty good job of pushing back. I was impressed with Pompeo's refusal to back down when Cory Booker was asking him this kind of atheist inquisition questions, the kind of questions that nobody would ever ask you if they weren't from New Jersey or New York or Massachusetts, where I grew up, where a lot of people think that it's strange to go to church on Sunday, to think that it's immoral to think that marriage should be between a man and a woman. And it shows how far the Democratic Party has come, where President Barack Obama was elected president being for traditional marriage. And just a few years later, the hard left has pushed so much that you see Cory Booker, a rising star in the Democratic Party, saying, if you're not for this, then I don't know if you can lead the CIA. It's like their foreign policy. And the last president, by the end of his term, promotion of gay marriage, promotion of abortion internationally, these were part of their foreign policy. The new administration wants to focus maybe on North Korea.
And battling, I don't know, nuclear war.
Yeah, there's a couple things that should keep,
keep
you
them
busy beyond
okay.
that.
All right. Thank you so much, Christopher Bedford, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller.
Thank you.
The Kilauea volcano in Hawaii continues to erupt, destroying nearly 30 homes since it began spewing lava last week. Evacuees don't know how long they might be displaced. Some were allowed to return home to pick up medicine, pets, and other necessities. Kilauea is one of the world's most active volcanoes, and it has been erupting continuously since 1983. Another mosque bombing in Afghanistan kills 12 people and injures 33. It was being used as a voter registration center. The country plans to hold elections in October, the first since 2014. No group has claimed responsibility for the blast. Vladimir Putin is sworn in again for another 6 years as Russian president. It's his fourth term. More than 1,000 protesters worried Putin has effectively become president for life have been arrested. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby has reaction from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert says Putin's re-election is no surprise. She says some Russians were paid to vote, others were jailed for protesting his repressive government. Now, despite the criticism, Russia is rolling out the red carpet for their president, who has been in office now for almost 20 years.
Inside the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin takes the presidential oath of office for the fourth time. It comes after a morning full of political theater. The 65-year-old was picked up in a bulletproof limousine, escorted to the ornate Alexander Hall as he walked up the stairs to the former throne room of Imperial Russia. If the former KGB spy finishes his term, he will have dominated Russian politics for almost a quarter of a century. The pomp and circumstance follows a weekend of anti-government protests in Moscow. 1,600 people were arrested, including the top opposition leader, who was carried through the crowds by police. He was later released. Russians chanting slogans like, "Putin is a thief." Niall Gardner says Putin's government uses intimidation as a tool.
The Russian regime, though, suppresses political opposition. It does not allow voters really a free and fair vote at election time.
Gardner says Putin also uses religion for political purposes, manipulating the Russian Orthodox Church.
He likes to see the church supporting his own role and status, and so he, in effect, has co-opted the church as part of the state.
Pope Francis last met with the Russian president in 2015. The Holy Father brought up the conflict in Ukraine, where many believe Russia continues to incite violence in order to gain political leverage.
Pope Francis has also called on Putin to stop the fighting in Ukraine, the former Soviet state. Many Eastern Rite Catholics live in Ukraine and other countries where Putin is trying to spread Russia's political control. Lauren?
Wyatt, how many Catholics do live in Russia?
Well, Lauren, the total number of Catholics is around 770,000. That may sound like a lot, but it's actually less than 1% of the population. Historically, Russians are suspicious of Catholics and treat them as outsiders. Many Catholics who come to Russia are from Germany, Armenia, and other European countries. But even some native-born Russians who attend Mass, who are Catholics, are also treated suspiciously as well. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. A secret witness testifies against an American pastor on trial in Turkey. Andrew Brunson is accused of helping terror groups and engaging in espionage. The 50-year-old evangelical from North Carolina denies the claim. Brunson faces 35 years in prison. Pope Francis is praying for peace in Central African Republic.
Per la popolazione della Repubblica Centrafricana.
The Holy Father, during his traditional Sunday blessing, recalled the serious violence in recent days that left many dead, including a priest. The Holy Father visited the country in 2015. It has faced several years of deadly interreligious violence.
La esclavitud no es algo de otros tiempos.
And Pope Francis describes modern-day slavery as, quote, a crime against humanity. The Holy Father spoke by video to a conference in Buenos Aires. He also calls for an end to the veil of indifference about the subject. Bishops across South America are banding together to provide support to Venezuelan migrants fleeing their country due to political unrest. And the Vatican is spearheading that effort.
We would like people who are forced to flee to feel the presence of the Church at each step of the way. And this is enhanced if the Church is cooperating all along the way.
Father says the Vatican is working with bishops from Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina. They will provide food and shelter, clothing, and health care. According to the United Nations, nearly 800 Venezuelans cross into Brazil every day. Coming up, an update on a Catholic bishop fighting leukemia and what the Pope is praying for this month. A new report finds a surge in protests at U.S. abortion clinics. The National Abortion Federation also says there is an increase in trespassing charges. The report does say incidents of vandalism are down. The U.S., according to some reports, has just under 800 abortion clinics. Governors in Oklahoma and Kansas are considering joining 7 other states with legislation protecting faith-based adoption agencies. Lawmakers worry the agencies would be forced to shut down if it turns away families whose lifestyles conflict with the agency's religious beliefs. Media headlines, including Oklahoma anti-gay adoption bill moves closer to becoming law, and Oklahoma passes adoption bill critics say is biased against gay couples, are fueling the debate. Oklahoma State Representative Travis Dunlap is one of the authors of the bill and joins us now. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Is this bill intended to stop gay couples from adopting?
This bill is not intended to stop gay couples from adopting. It has actually no effect on the ability of a gay couple to adopt, and that is by the admission of the left in this country themselves. They broadly advertise that gay couples can adopt in every state, including the states where this bill has been enacted. This bill is only to protect those with religious consciences to be able to place child according to the dictates of their conscience and of their written religious principles.
You contend that without this bill, faith-based adoption agencies would be forced to shut down, as they have been in places like Boston, here in Washington, San Francisco. Why do you believe that those agencies are at risk?
Well, as you have already indicated in your question, the agencies are at risk because historically they've been at risk. When the first Catholic Charities was shut down in Boston, that charity had been operating and meeting child placing needs for over a century. And to have them shut down by a lawsuit that was brought against them is the reason that we need these sorts of laws in the states.
Critics say this bill will keep Oklahoma's most vulnerable youth out of loving and committed homes. What is your response to that?
Well, thankfully, we have not seen that in the states where this has been enacted. We've seen an increase in the number of child placements in those states, and we want to see that same thing in Oklahoma. In fact, I'm familiar with groups that are leading statewide movements to get more people involved in the adoption process. As soon as private agencies are able to begin meeting the child placing needs of children in state custody, Oklahoma saw the greatest growth in child placements in any state. And we want to continue that trend. We want to protect the ability of private child placing organizations to help us meet our needs, to participate in the process.
Why is this bill important for religious freedom?
We have a long history of religious accommodation in this country. And if we allow an environment in which practicing our faith in the public square begins to be outlawed, then we have a country that is far removed from its roots, far removed from the reason for which so many sought the freedom that we have in this country and the freedom to exercise and worship as their religion dictates.
Media coverage. How do you think media coverage is handling this?
Well, we know that in many times the media is going to toe the line of the left. This is something we shouldn't be intimidated by because we know the truth. All you need to do is go read the bill. It's a simple 2-page bill based off of a long-standing law in Virginia, that itself being based off of a long history in the country of religious accommodation. And if you are able to get through the hype and get to the facts, you'll see that this is very reasonable. You'll see that we're on the right side of everything that America stands for.
Oklahoma State Representative Travis Dunlap, author of the bill, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. You all have a wonderful day. God bless you all.
Bishop George Murray from the Diocese of Youngstown, Ohio, is stepping down as head of the Bishop's Committee on Racism. Bishop Murray was recently diagnosed with cancer. He is receiving treatment at the Cleveland Clinic and will be replaced by Bishop Shelton Faub of Louisiana. Pope Francis tells a parish in Rome, Christian must be joyful. The Holy Father visited Blessed Sacrament to dedicate a home for people with disabilities. Francis also answered questions from parishioners. He told one, Christians must be cheerful while living out the gospel. Up next, an American singer in the March for Life in the UK. And a look at the Pope's protectors and why they're making history.
Los laicos están en primera línea de la vida de la Iglesia. Los laicos están en primera línea de la vida de la Iglesia.
Pope Francis releases his prayer intention for the month of May that lay people respond to the world's challenges. The Holy Father gives thanks for the faithful who are not afraid and who offer hope to the underprivileged. An American singer who took the Oscars by storm wearing a pro-life dress voiced her support of the UK March for Life in London. Joy Villa joined Saturday's event, which for the first time took place in the capital city. The Catholic Herald UK reports she sang up a storm, and a speaker told the crowd, "We will win this battle by truth, but we will win it even more by courage." There was another March for Life Saturday in Lima, Peru. Organizers say 800,000 people attended. Abortion is illegal in the country unless the mother's life is in danger. 32 new Swiss guards are now on duty at the Vatican. They were inducted this weekend into the oldest standing army in the world. Vatican correspondent Juliette Lindley takes us to the ceremony, which is a tradition dating back nearly 500 years.
With an oath in German and 3 fingers, symbolizing the Holy Trinity, raised, the newest Swiss guards pledged their loyalty to the Pope.
When I was a kid, I was quite an admirer of the Swiss Guard, those shiny armors and the spirit they have.
19-year-old Nicolas Albert is from Zurich. He's proud to be joining this exclusive military corps in which faith and force go hand in hand.
Without faith, you can't really do your service. It depends all on your faith.
For nearly 500 years, new recruits have been sworn in on May 6th, the same day when 147 Swiss guards died, defending Pope Clement VII in 1527. To join ranks, you must be Swiss, Catholic, single, under 30, and at least 5'8". This year, the Guards' famous uniform is getting an update. They'll soon be sporting new headgear. It's made from plastic and is cooler and more comfortable. But despite the history and prestige, Switzerland's ambassador to the Holy See says recruiting isn't easy. The monthly $1,800 salary is low by Swiss standards, and Catholics make up less than 40% of the population.
It was very difficult in the 70s and 80s. Now we have more candidates, so we can take the best. But it's something which always needs efforts. It's not an easy job. It's not financially attractive as it was in the 16th century.
Yet the Guards continue to be a source of national pride for the tiny nation. And for these young men, it's much more than a job.
The role of a Swiss Guard is missionary as well as military. In other words, he needs to protect the Pope not just with his weapons, but also with his prayers. A true testament to the Guard's motto, which is fiercely and faithfully. At the Vatican, Juliet Lindley, EWTN News Nightly.
For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. Good night and God bless you.